My name is Dana Whitfield. I am 32 years old. And for 4 years, I worked beside my sister at the same company without telling a single person we were related. Not because I was ashamed of her. Because I had learned from years of watching how she operated that mixing family and professional life with my sister was something I could not afford to do. I was right. I just did not know how right until it was almost too late. What she did, how she did it, and what happened 6 months after the day I sat across from my manager and understood completely. What had been going on behind my back is a story I have never told in full until now. If you are new here, please subscribe right now and drop your country and local time in the comments. I read every single one. Now let me take you back to the beginning. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. Second of 3 children. My older brother Marcus had left for college by the time the dynamic between my younger sister Renee and me had fully formed, which meant that for the most formative years of our adolescence, it was essentially just the two of us in a house, with 2 parents who worked long hours and trusted us to manage ourselves. Renee is 3 years younger than me. She was the kind of child who observed everything and said very little, and stored what she observed with the patience of someone who understood instinctively that information is currency and timing is everything. I did not recognize this about her when we were young. I recognized it in retrospect, which is the only way you ever recognize certain things about the people closest to you. I was the opposite of Renee in almost every meaningful way. Direct, transparent. The kind of person who said what she meant and expected others to do the same. I was not naive about the world, but I had a specific blind spot about the people I loved, and that blind spot was this. I assumed that love meant the same thing to everyone. It does not. I graduated from Georgia State with a degree in marketing. I took a position as a junior account manager at a mid-sized advertising firm in Atlanta called Meridian Group. I was 23 years old, determined, and willing to put in the work in a way that I think only people who genuinely love what they do can sustain over time. I loved it. The strategy, the client relationships, the specific satisfaction of a campaign that landed exactly the way you had designed it to land. I was good at it. My managers knew I was good at it. My clients knew I was good at it. Within 2 years, I had been promoted once. Within 3 years, I had a client portfolio that was larger than any of my peers at the same level. Within 4 years, I was the clear frontrunner for the senior account director position that had opened when my manager's manager moved to the New York office, senior account director. The position I had been working toward since my first week at the company. Then, Renee applied for a job at Meridian. She called me before she applied. She said she had been looking for a change, that the firm she was at was going nowhere, that she had heard good things about Meridian and wanted to know if I thought it was worth applying. I told her it was a good company. I told her I thought she would do well there. I did not tell her not to apply. I should have told her not to apply. Not because I did not want her there, but because I knew, in the part of myself that understood Renee clearly, that having her in the same professional environment as me was something I should think about more carefully before encouraging. I did not think about it carefully enough. She was hired for months after I suggested she apply. Different department. Client services rather than account management. Different floor. I told myself the distance was sufficient. It was not. The changes were gradual. The way all the important things are. First, I noticed that certain colleagues who had been warm toward me for years became slightly cooler. Not cold, just recalibrated. The specific temperature shift of people who have heard something and are deciding how much weight to give it. I noticed that my manager, a woman named Christine who had been one of my strongest advocates, began scheduling our one-on-ones less frequently. When we did meet, she was professional and appropriate and somehow slightly less present in the way she had always been present. Before, I noticed that a client I had managed for 2 years, a relationship I had built from nothing and considered one of my strongest, had begun requesting more touchpoints. With the client services team, Renee's team, I noticed all of these things, and I cataloged them, and I told myself there were reasonable explanations for each of them. Individually, I did not look at them. Collectively, then, one afternoon, Christine called me into her office and closed the door. She sat down across from me and she looked at me with the expression of someone who has been deciding for a long time whether to have a conversation. And has finally decided, she said. Dana, I want to ask you something directly. And I need you to be honest with me. I said yes. Is there something going on with your client relationships that I should know about? Specifically with the Henderson account? Henderson was my 2-year client. The one who had been requesting more touchpoints with client services? I said there was nothing I was aware of. I asked what she had heard. Christine paused. Then she said, I have received some feedback from a few different sources, suggesting that you have been less than professional in some of your client communications. That there have been some concerns about your judgment on a few recent campaigns. I stared at her. What feedback? I said, from whom? She could not share the sources. She said it was a pattern that had come up from multiple directions and that she wanted to give me the opportunity to address it before it went further. Left that meeting and sat in a bathroom stall for 10 minutes. Then, I went back to my desk and I started thinking about the timeline, the cooler colleagues, Christine's distance, the Henderson account's shift toward client services. Of it had started approximately 4 months ago. 4 months ago was when Renee had joined the company. I want to be precise about what happened next, because I think precision matters when you are describing how you discovered that someone you loved had been systematically dismantling something you had spent for years building. I did not confront Renee immediately. I am a strategic person by nature, and I understood that confronting her without evidence would accomplish nothing except alerting her that I was onto her instead. I started paying attention differently. I paid attention to which colleagues Renee spent time with at lunch, which client services contacts overlapped with my account portfolios, which internal conversations she might have access to that involved my work. Over the following 3 weeks, I had quiet conversations with 3 colleagues I trusted. Not fishing expeditions. Real conversations where I asked direct questions and listened carefully to what was said and what was not said. What I assembled from those conversations was this. Renee had been, over the course of 4 months, making comments about my work in contexts where she had no business making comments about my work. Not loud accusations. Quiet concerns. The specific language of someone who cares about the company and is reluctantly sharing something they have noticed. She had told a colleague in Henderson's account services team that she had heard from a family friend that I was going through a difficult personal period and that it might be affecting my professional focus. She had told someone in Christine's department that she was concerned about some of the decisions I had been making on a recent campaign decisions she had no visibility into, and therefore no legitimate basis for, commenting on. She had positioned herself in the Henderson account as a more reliable and present point of contact, slowly, incrementally, building a relationship with the client that did not announce itself as competition, but functioned as exactly that. She had done all of this while having lunch with me twice a week, and asking about my weekend plans, and being, to all appearances, my sister, who happened to work in the same building. I went home that evening and sat in my apartment for a very long time. I Thought about the 11-year-old Renee who had observed everything and stored it. About the specific patience of someone who understood that information is currency and timing is everything. Had been patient for 4 months. She had been thorough and she had been completely invisible. While doing it, I made a decision that night. I was not going to go to Christine with what I had gathered yet. What I had were conversations and impressions, things that could be explained away or denied. I did documentation. I spent the next 3 weeks building it. Every client email I had sent on the Henderson account for the past year, printed and organized. Every campaign decision I had made, documented with its rationale and its outcome. Every positive piece of feedback I had received from the Henderson team, assembled into a clear, factual record of a strong and well-managed client relationship. I also documented the timeline. The exact dates when the temperature had started shifting. The colleagues who had mentioned Renee's name in the context of concerns about my work. The pattern of client services touch points with Henderson that corresponded with Renee's arrival. I did not manufacture anything. I assembled what existed and let it speak for itself. Then I requested a meeting with Christine. The meeting lasted 2 hours. I walked Christine through everything. Not emotionally. Not as a grievance. As a presentation. The same way I would present a campaign strategy, structured, evidenced, clear. I showed her the documentation of my Henderson work. I showed her the timeline. I showed her the pattern. I told her that the person whose comments had reached her was my sister. That I had not disclosed our relationship when Renee joined the company because we worked in different departments and I had not anticipated that it would become relevant. It had become relevant, Christine. Listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet. For a long moment. Then she said, "Dana, why did you not come to me sooner?" "Because I needed to be able to show you something," I said. "Not just tell you something." She looked at the documentation in front of her. "You built a strong case," she said. "I built an accurate case," I said. "There is a difference." Christine took the information to HR. An investigation followed. It was quiet and professional and took 4 weeks. At the end of those 4 weeks, Renee was called into a meeting with HR and her department manager. I was not there. I do not know exactly what was said. What I know is that Renee was placed on a formal performance improvement plan and moved to a different account portfolio, one with no overlap with any of my clients, and the senior account director position was offered to me 2 weeks later. Renee called me the evening after her HR meeting. She was not apologetic. She was furious. She said I had gone behind her back, that I had used our family relationship to damage her professionally, that she had only been trying to advance her own career, and I had made it personal. I listened to everything. Then I said, "Renee, you told a colleague I was going through a difficult personal period to explain away my professional performance. You told people in my manager's department that you had concerns about my work you had no visibility into. You spent 4 months quietly redirecting a client relationship I had built over 2 years. And you did all of it while having lunch with me twice a week." Silence. "That is not advancing your career," I said. "That is using mine as the ladder." She hung up. 6 months after that phone call, Renee resigned from Meridian. I did not know. She was going to resign until the day it happened. Her manager mentioned it to mine, and Christine told me as a matter of professional courtesy. I sat with that information for a moment. Then I called my brother, Marcus, not to tell him what had happened. I had told him months earlier, when I needed someone to talk to who knew us both. But just to talk. To say out loud to someone who loved both of us that I was sad about how it had ended. That I had not wanted it to end this way. That I had wanted, more than I had admitted to myself during the months of documentation and meetings and HR processes, for my sister to just be my sister. Marcus listened. He did not take sides. He said, "She made choices, Dana, and you responded to them. That is the whole story." He was right. That is the whole story. It has been a year since Renee resigned. She is at a different company now. We have not spoken since the phone call the night of her HR meeting. I sent her a text at Christmas, short, genuine, leaving a door open. She did not respond. I have made my peace with that. Not quickly. Not without grief. But, genuinely, I am in my second year as Senior Account Director at Meridian. The Henderson account is one of my strongest. Christine remains one of my greatest advocates. I think about what Renee did, and I think about what it cost her. Not just professionally. The relationship. The lunches. The easy familiarity of a sister who works in the same building and asks about your weekend. She spent 4 months building something that she thought would advance her. What she actually built was the end of something that could not be rebuilt. I think she knows that. I hope she knows that, and I hope that somewhere in the knowing, there is the beginning of something she does differently. That is not something I can give her. It is something she has to find herself. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had someone use your trust as the tool they needed to work against you? Have you ever sat across from a person you loved and understood, for the first time, the full architecture of what they had been building while you were not looking? Drop the word ladder in the comments if this story reached something real in you. And if you are new here, subscribe. Every single day I share a new story about family, about truth, and about the moment you finally see clearly what has been in front of you all along. I will see you in the next one. Kayla's Dark Truth.